Hello, everyone. Welcome. We are live from the Inkarnate verse. Today, we are creating a fantasy road, forest road encounter map. We're basically going to be recreating this map right here. I'll go ahead and provide that link in the chat. I'll make sure to pin it as well so that people can see that. Make sure that for some reason, I'm making sure the stream working? Can people hear me? Right now, it's kind of spinning right now. I want to make sure that it is working properly. People in the chat, if you can hear me, please let me know. Make sure everything is working okay. Okay. I think the audio seems to be working here. Just double checking to make sure everything is operating properly. It says we're connected. Yep. All right. Looks good. All right, everyone. So again, we are creating a forest road encounter map. And we're going to pretty much be recreating this or something very similar to, maybe not exactly, but something very close. So we'll go ahead and create a new map. I'm going to go to Fantasy Battle Maps. You choose that style. We're going to choose Ultra 4K. If you don't have a very strong machine, probably choose 3K over 4K, but my machine is decent, so we'll go ahead and use that. We're just going to use your standard landscape aspect ratio. Okay. Take a look here. All right. So the first thing when I work on any map is you need to kind of set a scale, and that's what the grid is for. So I'll turn that grid on. The standard for the landscape aspect ratio is 40 by 30, but that is absolutely massive as a battle map. And really, this is the stage where you need to decide how much of the road do you want your players to encounter, right? If it's a really long stretch of the road, like this, a super long stretch where it's a lot of road, then you might want to leave the scale where it is right now, which is at the 40 by 30, right? Because that makes sense. But if you wanted to show a much smaller stretch of the road, per se, then you would want to use a smaller, a larger grid. So if we go to the grid here and we just have this, oopsie, let's go ahead and make sure that that gets put down properly, just so you can see that road there. Okay, so if I go over here and change it to 20, so I'm having it, which makes them bigger, then you're doing a smaller section of the road. So it's kind of important to know that when you're setting your scale, if you want a large stretch, like 1,000 feet or whatever of road, then bring the scale down for the stamps as well as the grid. But if you want to create a zoomed in section, maybe 100 or 200 feet or so, then you would bring that scale up. It's the same thing with the stamp. So I hope that kind of makes sense when you're putting that together, okay? But we're going to stick with this grid right here where it's 20 by 15. I just feel like most battle maps don't need to be that big, though you can if you want. I am going to next then decide where the road is going to be. And I just use a path for that or a line from the line tool. So I just want the road to be kind of windy like this. So it has a nice shape to it. If you don't like it, you can always just make another one. It's just a guide to kind of help you out, like how much of the road do you want to see. And what's really cool is you can also move it around, rotate it, just how much of the road that you want to have, right? So I think this right here will work just fine. And what I'll do is I'll set aside the negative space or where the road will be and where dirt and grass will be. And so what I'll do is I'll go ahead and just pick a texture. I'll choose grass. And the thing is you're going to notice is that the scale might be a little big. See, those grass tufts are pretty big. You might want to bring it down just a hair. So I'll probably bring the scale of this down a little bit, advanced settings, and I'll bring the scale down to 80, just a little bit smaller. And what I'll do is I'll just create the outline of where the road would be. So filling in with the grass part, let's put another part right here. And just remember, each one of those equals 5 square feet. So think about how wide the road is going to be. So here, the road is 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 feet, roughly 25 feet across. So you get the idea. So now that that's gone, I can remove that. And now I have the road and I have the grass parts. From here, I like to use a really cool line stamp here that's called grass. And if you just type in grass right here, it should have a grass line. And I'll go ahead and just place it down so you can see what it looks like. But there's a nice grass line there. We'll bring the stamp scale down to, let's bring it up a little bit because I want it to be noticeable. just like that. And then you can just go in with that and then just go along the outside like this. We'll put 2 down. You'll have to rotate the stamp a little bit. There we go. You see that side worked well, but this other one I'll have to flip around. So if I select that and then just flip, it'll have facing the other way. There you go. Okay. So not complex, easy to put together. So now that that part's put together, you have the road, you have the grass parts. Is now we can just go in and fill in the rest to make sure that it works right. So I go in right here and just make sure that the grass is filled in, because sometimes you might have missed a little bit. You could start with the grass line first, with the line, or you could use the texture. It's up to you, whichever way you want to start first, it's fine. Just make sure there's a lot of room in there. Now that that's put together, now we want to put down some stamps to frame maybe a clearing where there's going to be a lot of light shining onto the road. And what I use the trees for that. And so what I'll do is I'll go into the stamp catalog and I'll just type in tree. And this is going to be what's called like your positive space. A positive space, when I say that term, I'm meaning anywhere where there's stamps. Lots and lots of stamps. Where there's no stamps and it's just texture, I'm going to call that negative space or open space, okay? And so framing is a way of like closing out and closing the space where your players can move. And so what I'll do is that I'll have trees be in the corners or on the edges, but not everywhere. And when there's just a tree but no shadow, then what I have when I do this, it means that this area is not passable because there's a bunch of shrub and stuff underneath it. What I'll do is I'll take a stump and then make a shadow, and then areas where there's a tree shadows or shadows from the canopy, and then a stump. So I'll show you. First, let's go ahead and put this together. I'll just turn the shadow off for now. In fact, what I'll do is won't even place it yet. This way I can go ahead and change the shadows right away with the stamp. We'll start with something easy, just make the shadows pretty big. And then I'm going to change the hue a little bit. I like this green, but I really like when greens are a little bit more saturated. It pops out more. So I'll just change the hue just a little bit, and I'll boost the saturation a hair. Okay, now that I've edited the stamp, it should save those stamp settings, so I don't have to edit the stamp again. So corners are a good place to kind of start. It's a way to block stuff. So I'll usually put some here, and let's put maybe one more in this corner right here like that. And then I'll start putting down stumps. So just type in stump right here like this. And remember, 5 square feet. So this is a huge stump. This would be 5 feet across. So what I want to do is maybe bring it down a little bit. And I'm going to adjust the shadow settings so that way every single stamp after that has the same settings. Bring the intensity of the shadow. And you can place them anywhere you want, but I try to place them generally within one of the squares so that way you're not like half on and half off of a stump. And that's okay to put it here, just in the center. Just make sure that when you do put them in the center in multiple groups, maybe just offset them just a little bit like this, like that, so it doesn't look like it's set to a grid. Just kind of a helpful thing. And what you can do is you can have regular stumps as they are, and then you can have a stump represent where the tree trunk is, and then a shadow goes on top of that. So let's show you how I do that real quick. So I'll take a tree stump and I'll put it on top. We'll make it a decent size, so it will be 5 feet. And then just take that same tree stamp that you had, turn off the shadow, bring the brightness to 0, and then bring the opacity down. I usually go around 30, 35. You can bring them even smaller than that or bigger than that. It's up to you. And then just place that right there like that. And then you have the shadow, and that shows that players can move around underneath that tree because there's nothing obstructing the player's movements. And this way you kind of have a mix between the framing from the trees as well as trees that your players can walk under. And I think that's just a really nice kind of trick to do that. And we'll make a couple of those, actually. We'll make a couple. So I'll put another one over here maybe. Let's put one over here. I think that would be good. Over on this side. And then I'll just select this and make sure the shadow is off, and then choose a different one. Let's do this one right here. I think that looks good. There we go. Okay. And what I try to do is push those shadows all the way up to layer +5, so that way any stamp that's below it will have a shadow on it. So if I put down a stamp like this and I place it down, give it a second, it's loading. And you'll notice that some of it is in the shadow and some of it isn't because the stamp is below. And so that's a really nice trick to kind of create this realism with the shadow work. So just kind of important to always use that kind of stamp, use it as a shadow, and it works great. So now you see we have these, so that works out good. All right, and what I'm going to do is just create most of the natural features first, and then I'll start putting down some other features like a ruined structure. Because what makes a battle map or an encounter map really enticing to look at, or it kind of snaps your player's attention, is by creating contrast. And one of the contrasts is contrasting a natural area versus an unnatural structure that might have been created by a fantasy species or race within your campaign, right? So that's going to make that big contrast. And what I'll do is I'll end up probably creating a ruined outpost somewhere around here. And so that built structure will contrast a lot to the natural forest elements really, really well. And it's something that I do with almost every map. If I'm making any kind of natural area for my players to encounter, I try to throw in one human or race-based, species-based structure that could be ruined or hidden or a hut or whatever it might be, even just a broken, ruined down wall along the side of the road looks good, right? Because it's just throwing in that contrast. So whenever you're doing that, always remember to contrast those two together. So first we'll continue the landscape a little bit first, and then we might end up changing some of the grass stuff. So what I'll do now is I'll go ahead and throw in more of the natural features. So I'll probably throw in some logs. And in the Hell terrain pack, there's this really nice fallen wood right here, but it's really nice. You might have to change the hue a little bit so it kind of matches the same kind of color. I try to make it somewhat similar, but you don't have to. And when you're putting down fallen logs and stuff, think carefully about how your players will interact with it, right? So what I like to do is throw maybe a log into here somewhere, and I want it to be halfway in the shadow and half in the light. And this will act as maybe something that your players can hide behind if there's an arbalist or an archer shooting arrows at them or shooting a spell. They can hide behind that log. So it's very, very helpful to do that. I'll also, before I place one down, change those shadow settings a little bit as well. I just always a habit to change the shadow settings, the settings of everything first before I place the stamp. So that way I'll be able to keep those settings. So a nice stamp right here. So players can hide behind this. And we can also throw in some more stuff. Let's throw in like a stump right here that fell over. And let's put it maybe overlapping, going into the road a little bit. I think that always looks nice as well. And then we can maybe throw in one more fallen piece over here. This is a nice little area where players can maybe interact with the environment. Pick up a log, roll it over, push it onto a player or an enemy or whatever it might be. What makes a really, really, really good battle map is one in which your players are going to interact with. They can hide behind things, they can jump over things, they can trip enemies, monsters, they can kick them off a ledge. Any of those things are really, really, really helpful. It really helps to make it more immersive, and players love that kind of stuff. They love it when you make things more immersive. They can't stand it when there's just flat terrain, nothing to interact with. They don't like that, and they'll get bored of the combat quickly. So throw in things for your players to interact with. Let's throw in a couple more features on the ground. I think we could throw down like a fallen tree or two. I think that would look nice. So there should be some trees, fallen down trees. Let's use these right here. I think this looks good. And the bark's a little bright. I'll bring it down just a little bit. And then just like before, I might have some overlapping. So maybe this right here fell from right here. So we could have that falling here. Let me think for a minute here. Let's move this over to here. We're going to take a look at some things and change things up. Let's go back to these a little bit later. Actually, I'll throw this down so that's in my history. And I'll bring the brightness down. There we go. Now it should be in my history. Great. And then I'll come back to that later. Let's actually make the structure now, because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to have a lot of the elements on the map kind of pointing to that central structure. Remember I mentioned like a ruined structure is really helpful. So what I'll do is I'll select everything and just lock it for now, so I don't accidentally select anything while I'm working on it. And then I'll use the shape tool to create a structure. And I'm just going to put a tiny bit of perspective in the structure, so that way I can kind of show height, but not too much, because the tool's not really designed to show, battle maps aren't really designed to show perspective, but you can cheat. You can do a little bit of power work and just throw in just a little bit here to make it interesting. So what I'll do is I'll use a circle shape, and then I'm going to go into the stamp catalog, and I'll probably end up using some kind of like wall. This right here, the stone wall, works great. I'm going to turn snap to grid on. It's down here at the bottom if you're looking for that. And then what I'll do is I'll make it to where it's 10 feet across, and I'm going to scale it down. So there's step one. And I'm probably going to end up having it placed like right about here, right here, I think. And then what I'll do is I'll turn off the shadow. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a couple of them. Let's create 3 of them. So the very bottom one, I'm just going to bring the brightness down. Put this other one, bring it up a layer. I'm going to turn off the snap to grid for now. And I'm going to go down to that bottom one again. I'm going to bring the brightness down. What I'm trying to do is create height through contrast. So by changing the brightness of each one of these kind of rings will kind of help to do that. And what I'm also going to do is to make sure that the stone isn't exactly the same. I'm just going to flip some of these so that they're different. There we go. And I'll bring the brightness up just a little bit on this top one right here. Or actually I can bring the brightness down on the middle one. Let's do that. Okay. There we go. Okay. And then for what I'll end up doing here is we'll make one more. I'll copy and paste one more of these. And then I'll find a ruined wall for the top. So I'll just go ahead and scroll down here. There should be a ruined one. There it is. Broken stone wall. That'll be perfect. Right there. And then I'm also going to create some texture underneath of that. So what I'll do is go back and then I'll choose the fill option. We're going to go into texture. I mean, this texture right here works fine as like a cement. That works fine. And I can just place that right on top. And that will kind of represent that ruined portion. The next section that I want to do is that when something looks ruined, if the perfect circle doesn't look right, and you'll notice that there's some repetitive elements, these little stones right here. And so what we'll do is to fix that is I'll go back in and choose the portal option. And then I'm just going to break open the portal like this and then have a section of it broken open. And then I can rotate this. And then this is where players are going to climb up to get to that section. I can put one here probably. I could also put like a piece of a wooden dock piece right here, and then players can climb up that way, or they can have some rubble while it fell down. It's up to you, but we'll have this be the top part. And then I'm going to end up using, let's find a dock, which we're going to use as some like wooden kind of scaffolding or battlement. I'm going to bring the brightness down a little bit. There we go. Layer none. Okay. And then I'm going to use some, let's go ahead and create a little bit of perspective here by adding in some wooden pieces here. And then one moment here, I'll go ahead and set up the rest of it. Let's put that there and underneath. Oopsie, we'll go up one. Here we go. There we go, up. Turn off the shadow on this one. Bring the brightness down. There we go. Okay. And then the next step is to create some kind of supports that are holding that up. So I'll just use a pole for that. Nice pole here. Make sure that that circular face at the top, it's facing upward. We're going to bring the brightness down. It seems to be below it, so we should bring the brightness down. And I'm just going to put it right where those circles are on the dock. Right here like this. Perfect. That'll work out great. And then I'm going to also create a ladder. Let's see here. Let's use this one right here. I think this looks good. Let's use this one. Okay, bring it up. Brightness. There we go. And then I'm going to go ahead and just create group. And then I'm going to place that right over here. Let's put it up a layer. There we go. And let's scale it down a little bit. There we go. Okay, and then what I think I want to do is bring these up a little bit. Let's bring that there. A little too much perspective there I'd put, so we'll bring it up a little bit more. There we go. Okay. So you have a ladder, you can go up onto here, and this is where players can like get a height advantage for whatever your player might be that has a height advantage with their attacks or whatever. So you'll find that really, really helpful. So we've got that put together, and I'll probably end up changing the grass line a little bit as well. So I'll probably end up deleting it and putting it around here because I don't want the grass to grow necessarily right through the tower. That looks weird, but we'll fix that in a little bit. Let's go ahead and continue building on this piece. So if we type in rubble, I want to show that the tower kind of fell over a little bit. So I'll continue to throw on some stamps right here like this. And let's push it up a layer. There we go. I'm going to put it just right there like this to make it look like it's collapsed. Let's put another one down, put one right here, and then another one right here. I think should be good. Actually, let's flip this around. Might be helpful to do it this way instead. There we go. Yeah, I like that a little bit better. Okay, and then we can go ahead and take this top one right here. I'm going to turn off the fill. This is going to be another circular one right here. In fact, you know what? I might remove that and just put the rubble instead. So I'll put some here and put some right here. There we go. And just kind of make it look like the whole thing just kind of collapsed. About there looks good. Okay, that looks nice. All right. And then let's throw in another broken wall piece. Let's use this one. I think this looks good. Put that right about there. Okay, a little too bright. We'll bring the brightness down. There we go. Just want to make sure that there's room for players to walk through. So right here, you'll see that there's got to be enough room to go through this road piece right here. All right, that looks good. All right. The audio is still coming out. People still having a hard time with the audio? Please let me know. I hope not. That's not good. Please, audio, don't cut out on me. All right, we're at 112 changes, so I'll save it. We're going to call it Forest Road, as you know already. Yeah, we kind of had an interesting start. When I pressed start streaming, for some reason it didn't work. I had to refresh the page, so I wonder if that has any impact on the audio. This doesn't look like it's working for everyone else. Good. I'm glad it's been smooth so far. Again, yeah, 444. That's great. Love to see that. Good, good. We're going to quickly save this, and then we're going to start working on continuing with the fallen lumber, the fallen wood, the fallen stumps and stuff, because what I want to do is I want to have a lot of those wooden pieces kind of pointing inward towards that collapsed outpost that we're kind of putting together right here, because I think that would be a nice little touch to have that there. Let's also fix that grass, because that part will kind of mess me up a little bit. So what we'll do is we'll delete this part right here, and then I'm going to go in. We're going to go ahead and use the regular texture grass, and I'm just going to go ahead and put a little dirt right around this ledge right here like this, and then I can go ahead and put my grass piece around that, because it looked kind of odd, right? Did I see it right? Okay, there we go. One more. There we go. Okay. Then of course you'll have to go in and kind of fix that mistake that was made. So go in right here. There we go. And I can do the same thing on the other side too, really, but for now I think it's okay. We'll come back to that in a little bit. All right. So like I said, I'll probably want to rotate some things. So I'm going to have this facing like this, right towards that piece. I think this one right here is fine. I'm going to have that pointing inward towards this tree right here. And with this one, Maybe I'll put it right here, kind of overlapping behind and just kind of facing towards that. Or if it's just too much out of the way, you can move it over to here somewhere. Make sure that it's below the trees, of course. In fact, all of my trees should be up. Probably, oops, undo that. Let's see here. All of these trees right here should be up. Probably several layers so that stuff can be beneath it. Okay, awesome. Glad the audio is working fine. Great. Okay. All right, so then once I've kind of put that stuff down, let's actually, I am going to change this up a little bit. Just kind of want the grass line to work, to be a little separate. There we go. And then I can just go in, and I don't have to change the grass part, just this part. There we go. Okay. All right, now that's kind of put together. So then the next step then is to, you want to like blend in the stamps that have been put down on the road. And so there's some great textures for that. We can use some of the rubble stuff to kind of blend in our structure right here. And you'll probably have to do some scaling a little bit just to make sure that it looks right. And I'll bring the brightness down just a little bit. It should be a little bit darker. And then I'll keep the opacity at 100% for now, but I'm just going to lightly tap just around the edges here, especially right here, because there should be a lot of rubble. When something fully collapses, there's usually a lot of rubble on the ground. There we go. So a lot of rubble there. That looks good. That looks fine. And we'll put a little bit maybe behind here as well. Okay. And then what about blending in what stamps we have with the wood? Great trick. Dry grass is a great texture you could use. This stuff works great for many, many things. What I'm going to end up doing with it is make it look darker by bringing the brightness down. And by bringing the brightness down, I'm going to make it look like it's wood chips, bark, stuff that fell off. And then I can just go ahead and place it like this, wherever there is some wood pieces. And that's going to help to blend in those pieces with the texture underneath. And you can always bring the opacity down and change the size if you feel it's too big. Now we can turn the grid off for now because I think we've kind of set the scale already. So I'll quickly save it at 143 changes. And then what we'll move forward from here is we'll create more parts for your players to kind of interact with. For right now, you'll see there's a lot of negative space. Remember what negative space is. It's space where there's no stamps. And it's okay to have a decent amount of negative space. But what you don't want is like 100% negative space. You want to have some positive space. That means space with stamps because that is going to help to kind of create that contrast. When you have a decent open space next to a bunch of trees, those contrast to each other and they kind of pop out. Remember that trick at the beginning of the stream? Contrast is the trick to really making your map pop out and to making it look also realistic, in my opinion. So I'm just going to clean up some of these spots here. Oopsie, I accidentally went over there into here. There we go. Let's fix that, my bad. There we go. Okay. All right, there's still so much more that our players can kind of interact with. So what about putting down some grass texture? Because right now, because the grass is a flat texture and it just has the artifacts built into it, it doesn't really look like there's dimension to it. So what we'll do is we'll choose another grass alpha texture. We'll go on grass. And there should be a really good one in jungle. It's right here, tall grass alpha. Now the thing is you might have to like change it up a little bit. I noticed that it's like, it contrasts a little too much. There's a dark green. So you might have to bring maybe the saturation down just a little bit to make it match a little bit more, or even change the hue a little bit to where it kind of matches in a little bit more. And I might probably going to bring the texture scale down as well. And what looks really nice is just to kind of place it wherever you're, we'll bring the brightness up on a little bit, a little too dark still. The color, bring the brightness up a little bit. There we go. I think that looks nice. Right here. And then just right wherever you have like some of the tree, you notice how the tree, it doesn't blend very well with the ground. It just has the flat kind of black line work or green line work along the edge there. To blend up those stamps, just throw in this grass right here. That will blend in that quite nice. And even put little patches here and there. Oops, I noticed there that there is some grass that I missed. I'm not sure how that happened there. And then just throw in the grass, throw in some patches here, here. There you go, and put some over here as well. There we go, that looks good. And then you have that nice grass contrast in there. You know what also makes something look like it's been there for a while, something like a ruined outpost like this, is to throw in overgrowth, right? When something has been untouched by a species and it's open and it's hasn't been taken care of, it gets overrun with nature, right? Nature reclaims its space. And so one thing you can do is use vines to show that this outpost has long been abandoned, right? And so what you can do is there's several ways to do vines. I don't want to make long, windy vines. So what I'll end up is probably just using the stamp, but you can also use it in the line tool as well. So if I type in a stamp, if I type in vine, you'll see some nice vine options here. And so I'll go ahead and just place them kind of growing right here along here. And I think what this does is it really gives that illusion that time has passed here, because there's this growth, right? And the same thing too on these logs. Throw in a little bit of growth on top of these logs, and that will also kind of give it that illusion of time has passed. So I think it's always kind of a nice touch, and it also just looks good because you're throwing in more green. Right now there are two dominant colors on this map, and it's green and brown. Browns from the woods, greens from the grass, the trees, the vines. The only other color in there is gray, but gray is a neutral color, and so it will go with any color in here. So we'll probably throw in some more colors to make it kind of pop out more. One really nice thing you can do is put some flowers on the vines. So maybe it's a flowering vine. And what's really cool is you can just type in flower, and then you'll see all these kind of flowers right here that you can kind of choose from. And you can pick whichever one you want. Purple works really well with green, so why don't we place some purple ones? It's a little bright, so I'll bring the brightness down. I don't want it to be too much. There we go. And we'll just place a couple. I'll place two, one there and one here, and then I'll bring the size down. And what's really important is variation in size, right? Not all flowers are the exact same size, so it's always good to change up the sizes of natural elements like vines and flowers, trees, bushes, grass, right? Not every blade of grass is the same size. Not every tree is the same size. And so to make that look natural, you throw in a variation of sizes, and that way it looks way more natural. It's very, very helpful to do that. So let's continue just adding in more stuff to make this kind of pop out more. What works really well too is to go into our rubble section. Just type in rubble, and then all of the rubble elements will pop up. There's some really nice wooden pieces right here. So I think we'll use these. And I think right here, right against this looks nice, but I'll bring the brightness down, because I am going with a lot of dark wood here. And this is also another way that players can maybe get up here. So let's say that there's someone blocking this right here. Like, you could remove this and say the only way to get up now is to climb up this fallen wood right here and this rubble and then attack. You don't have to have this ladder here. You could completely remove that. So there's only one way to get up. But you know what? Players like options. It allows a different strategy. So there could be many ways to climb up this thing. You could climb up those vines to get up. You could crawl or climb up the rubble to get up to it, or you could take the ladder. Players like options. They never like being forced to do only one course of action. That frustrates them, and that makes combat really, really, really limited, restricting, and kind of boring. So many ways, points of access means many different strategies for that your players can employ to attack whoever might be stationed at the top of this kind of fallen tower area. Maybe there's some enemies hiding behind this segment right over here that I'm zoomed into, right? So it's always nice to kind of throw in those various elements so that your players can really have fun in the combat, because you really don't want boring combat. And trust me, It happens. I'm guilty of it. I've done it before. Okay, we're at 80 changes. Let's save it. Let's throw in a couple more details on the ground. Let's throw in a couple more things that players can interact with. And then we'll kind of have this finished. Where are we at for time here? 36 minutes? Oh, great. Perfect. We got tons of time. Things are going great. Let's go ahead and throw in some more details. I really like to throw in vines. I also had some fallen trees that we were supposed to put in. So let's do that, especially ones that have some shrubbery on it. I think that looks good. Let's have this one angled right here. And I'm going to have it to where the tree is facing to this thing right here. This circular piece right here is going to have the centerpiece. You notice that this log on the ground right here is facing towards it. This right here is going to be facing towards it. Have it on the ground overlapping like that. And that is going to be really, really helpful because what it will do is it's kind of pointing to that center piece right there. And then players will know that that's like also an important part of the combat. You know, in real life, those who have the height advantage, again, that's the advantage, right? Their arrows can go farther, spells might be able to cast farther. You can see more at a greater height, more strategy. So all of those elements facing towards that tower piece right there is perfect. It will tell the players, hey, that's an important part of the battle map that I am going to want to take or capture. So super, super important. Okay, let's go ahead and throw in just a couple more fallen pieces here. Let's throw in another one over here. Actually, let's stop. Let's do something else. Let's throw in maybe a broken cart. Okay, let's turn the grid back on just so that I kind of make sure that I'm not making this cart too big. It's about 5 feet in width. That's about right. And I'm going to have it to where it's facing, again, where it's facing towards that tower piece right there. There we go. Another thing that your players can interact with, right? Always nice to have those elements in there. What I might end up doing is just throwing a little bit of rubble, because you see, normally there'd be like these rocks and rubble scattered about. It wouldn't just all be in one area. Things get kicked. Animals kick things. Carts go by and shoot things out of the wheel off to the side. So to make that more realistic, we might want to throw in some rubble that will help to continue to blend in our fallen structure with the ground texture. And so what I'll do is I'm going to scale out, bring this down, and just place a couple right here like this. Just a couple here. But it's always nice to throw them into like clusters and then have little pieces. So like a cluster here and then one away from it, another one over here away from it. Maybe a cluster over here and then one away. Remember this trick of having a sense of realism to it, and throwing in rocks like this here and there are a great way to give that a sense of reality. You can even throw it, even some in the grass here. That's fine. Throw some in the grass. You're going to expect that to happen. Maybe a couple over here. That would help to continue the transition between those stamps. So now you have some nice rocks in here, as you would kind of expect. That fits in. And then what we'll do is we'll go into forest. Let's type in forest real quick, and we can kind of look at some other options here that we have to work with. And there are some vines. You could say that we could throw some vines, put those underneath the tree. And what I'll end up doing is using a shadow so that it kind of pops out a little bit. I'll change the hue to where it's more green. And I'll bring the brightness down a little bit, because that will help it to contrast with the brightness of the tree. So bringing the brightness down will help it to contrast against the brightness of the leaves of the tree stamps. So we'll throw in some of these vines right here to kind of help to get that to pop out more. In fact, I'll just copy, paste this, bring it over to here, copy, paste. Let's put another one over here as well. I think some more vines would look good. Oops, this didn't go up the layers that I wanted it to. A little bit of vine there looks good. Let's throw in one more vine over here. I think that should look good. Okay. And who knows, right? Maybe these vines are living, right? It depends on the campaign. With everything that's on here, there are so many possibilities of what your players are going to encounter here. Maybe this is an old outpost that's been taken over by thieves. Maybe there's a cult that's hiding here from authorities. Maybe there's an ambush waiting for you and your players who are protecting or being a bodyguard or a private retinue, security retinue for a noble, whatever it might be. There's so many options here. There's so much you can counter with. Maybe there's a druid who can control the vines and can grab you into the trees, right? So lots of different options that if you would be creative. The environment is going to say a lot about pretty much what your players are going to be doing on it. So I think overall that looks good. What I might also do is throw in maybe some stone texture on the ground as well that doesn't have any rubble. So if I just type in stone, there should be some stone texture. So let's do this green, this right here, mossy rocks. I think that will look good. We might have to change the scale a little bit. And what I'll do is I'll bring the opacity down. And I'm just going to paint this underneath. A lot of it, I might have to redo some of that rubble. But it does kind of make sense that there should be some kind of stone ground underneath because it's the foundation which this structure would have been built upon. So putting in a little bit of stone texture underneath it will kind of give it that feel to it, I think. So that will look nice. And you can even put some over here a little bit, over here, a little bit right here, have it kind of fade away. There we go. We'll go ahead and save it at 165 changes. Well, we're getting very close to being finished here. We're going to throw in the last bit of elements. We're going to also paint in some shadows. So we need to designate a light source. And we might want to throw in just a couple more kind of things that your players can interact with, like maybe a stump or something like that. So it could be nice. Again, in the Hell Pack, there is a nice... Let's type this in right here. There's some nice stumps right here. I think these look kind of nice. And we'll throw in maybe one of these in somewhere. And what I'll do is I'll look for a space that's got maybe too much negative space. I mean, overall, I think this is kind of distributed kind of nice, but we could throw in like a stump over here, or if you wanted to throw one over here somewhere. Let's change the size a little bit over here. I think let's put one just right there. And I think I might bring it down a layer. I want the vines to kind of be growing on top of it. There we go. And again, remember that trick to blending. Use that dirt texture, that dry dirt texture to kind of get that in. I'm actually going to bring the scale down. I'm kind of noticing that I'm not getting enough of it. There we go. Yeah. And I'll probably put some in here as well, just to kind of show that dirt has fallen down here. Right here is a good spot to have it as well. And over here. So far, so good. Okay. All right. Let's throw in some more forest elements. Let's type in forest again. And I'm kind of want to throw in some reds. I kind of feel like some reds would be some nice colors. So what I'll do is I'll throw in, right where there's some grass, I'll kind of throw in these. So wherever you see a big tuft of grass, I'll throw in some of these flowers, and this red will be a nice little element, or the pink or whatever it might be, will be a nice touch to kind of throw in there, because I feel like there's just a lot of greens, a lot of reds, a lot of browns, but this will bring the color out. You could also do like blue as well. Just want to get a little bit more color in there. Maybe, let's take a look what else we have here. Ooh, some thorn bushes are always a nice thing to have, right? Could throw that in somewhere. Some thorn bushes are great in combat. They can catch players' cloaks. Fantasy, big trope, cloaks, 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 right? They get caught in those brambles, so that's a great element to throw in. We could maybe throw in a little bramble patch just right here, I think. That'll be kind of nice, and it's something that your players can also interact with over here. So if they want to maybe get the upper hand on some bad guys, they can totally push them up against these brambles right here, and they'll get ensnared, and then you'll have an easier way of attacking. So we've added a lot here. We're going to do one more save, and we're going to throw in some lighting. So we'll have to pick like a light source, where it's coming from. And there's a lot of different ways that we can kind of go about doing this. There's top layers, there's shadows, all this stuff that you can use. Okay. Awesome. Oh, hey, thanks, by the way, in the chat. Appreciate you saying that. Very kind. Loved seeing so many people voicing themselves in the chat. Awesome. So many great people in here. Love it. Okay, all right. All right, so let's go ahead and throw in a light source. So you need to figure out what direction you want the light to go in. One neat little trick you can do if you are kind of not very good at light sources, just use a God ray texture filter. And then you can use this filter as a guide for where the light is. And I think we're just going to go with that, but there's all different ways to set it. Okay, but for those of you who are just not familiar with it, this little light ray will kind of make it easier for that. So I'm going to use the top layer for coloring, but you could use many different methods. There's also using the path tool. There's also using, or the line tool. You can use the shape tool to make shadows. You can use the top layer. A lot of different ways to kind of go about doing it, okay? But what I'll use is I'm going to use the top layer because everything is fixed on this map. The only time that I would not use the top layer for shadows is if I want to keep the shadow and I want to move the object. So that's one of the reasons why you might want to use the line or shape tool for shadows, is so that way you can move the shadow and the objects that's casting the shadow. You can move those two things together. But everything, if all of your stamps are fixed and you know that's exactly where you want them to be, then you don't need to do that. So I'll just use the top layer. Normally when I use the top layer, if you're kind of new to it, black works fine for shadows, but normally it's whatever the color, most dominant color on the map is, and that's green. Most dominant color is green. So I'll make it a greenish black color, and so that way it'll work out. Put it on the top layer, and I usually put it about 30%. And then what I'll do is, remember, we have the light rays there to kind of help us to where the shadow is going to be. So what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and put in this shadow right here, right where the tower is. And I'm going to go ahead and have some nice shadow here. Let's put a shadow here as well. There's got to be a shadow right here. And then we'll put in shadow right here as well. Okay. Just going to place it in over here, but here and there. Kind of an easy way of kind of putting it together. Let's put some shadows in here. This one's going to be kind of hard. And shadow here as well. Here. Ooh, we'll put it all in here as well. There we go. That looks good. Okay. Oh, we missed one over here as well. And over here as well. Okay. Let's go ahead and take a step back and take a look at it. Yeah, that looks all right to me. Okay. So there's a couple other things that you might want to add. I'll just go ahead and remove. Was just using the texture, that texture as a guide for where the shadows are. So now you kind of have a general idea. The next kind of step is to kind of throw on some filters. I think we're pretty much in the last part. So a couple things that you can do is the first filter that I generally always use is clarity. So when I turn it off, you kind of notice that the color is just a little dulled out, a little bit, not very much, just in comparison. It's not really dull, but when you add in that color clarity filter, you notice that the thing really pops out. And it's kind of, in my experience, when I see people who upvote maps on the Explore page or who like certain maps, I've noticed that colors that are highly saturated, the eye is trained for that. And so when colors are much more saturated, they pop out more and they're going to get a lot more views. So if you're like a freelancer or you just want to show how great your work is, just bump up the saturation quite a bit with a clarity filter or the color adjustment filter, and then you can bring up that saturation, and it's really going to make that pop out. You can see the big difference when I turn it on and then when I turn it off. Okay, so that's a big deal. Throw that in there. The other thing I might want to consider doing is creating a vignette, and the vignette kind of encapsulates this. And one thing that you can do is you can bring it down a layer, all the way down to layer -5. And what that will do is, because I put those trees in that corner, it's going to add a little bit of extra shadowing, layer -5, below all of those stamps. It's going to add a little bit of extra shadowing underneath those trees, causing them to pop out. The other thing that I might do is maybe boost the brightness a little bit more because we're going with that contrast. So I'll bring the brightness up a little bit more. There we go. And now the sense of height is really, really there. That vignette on the bottom layer, and then boosting the brightness up on those trees really, really created that contrast and caused that to pop out. Now that vignette trick only works unless you have trees in each corner. Otherwise, it's going to have this strange black vignette in a corner without a tree there. So just remember that trick. That way you don't have to just paint all this extra texturing or whatever for shadow work. So that's a great trick. The other thing you can do is you can also throw down some more texture stuff to kind of make more artifacts on the map. So if you go to texture filters, and if you go click the Inkarnate tag there at the top, it's going to load every single texture from every single style, and that way they're all available to you. And so what I'll use is this old paper. Now, because this texture filter is not default to this style, it won't be in the default blend mode in the style that it's normally assigned to. So just click overlay. And then what that does is it adds some extra artifacts to the map. And it's something that I like to use. You can also bring it down a layer if you want. So we'll bring it down a layer. Let me turn it up a little bit more so you can kind of see it and see what that does. What it does is it adds a little bit more artifacts to the map, giving it a little more grungy kind of feel. Right now, you don't have to do that. It might be fine as is. I'm just going to throw in just a little bit there because I kind of like it. And then there's another filter that I recommend that you use, and it's the color adjustment filter, not the black and white one. Just click this plus button right here. And what's really nice is this will allow you to do all kinds of fun things. You can boost up the saturation so it's really green. You can bring the brightness if you feel it's too dark. You can bounce up the contrast. That will also cause it to the lights and the darks to really to pop out. So remember these kind of tricks to use these color adjustment filters. I think I will boost the saturation up more. I kind of like that. I'll bring the brightness up a little bit more, and I will bring the contrast up just a little bit. I think that looks nice. And what's really cool is you can also make it look like it's a Fey road encounter. So maybe I want to flip it, and then here's my purple Fey version, more purple. Maybe I want it to be this kind of green, or I want it to be this bluish color. Okay, so what's really, really nice is using that hue slider to make this map into many, many maps. It's not just a forest encounter in a normal forest. It's in a Fey forest. So kind of nice tricks to use filters to kind of make things change the environment that it's taking place in. So always a nice little trick. The one last filter you can add is I can also throw in a spotlight filter. And what that will do is it will make it look like there's some light popping down right there. Now you do want to make sure that it's set to the overlay blend mode. This is what it looks like if I have it all the way up, but I'll bring it down a little bit, just to put a little bit of light in the clearing part. The clearing is the open space where no trees are at. That's why it's called a clearing. It's cleared of any trees. And so a spotlight makes sense there because there's a clearing, the maximum amount of light is going to be hitting that clearing. So it kind of makes sense to use a spotlight texture to kind of make it a little bit brighter in the center. You could also just use a light source. That's up to you, okay? But hey, that is it for today's stream. I hope this really helped out. Just remember the formula that I told you about, setting the scale, use the path to set where the road is. Then you can start using the grass with the line tool, all the texturing, and then throw in most of your environmental pieces. Remember to also throw in some structures made by a species within like some kind of race or species, because again, contrast is the key to making things pop out. Remember to add in multiple things for your players to interact with, like those brambles over there, like that cart that I have at the top of the road, like that demolished or dilapidated or derelict little outpost right here, like the wooden, like these fallen stumps. You can interact with that, like this stump right here. These are all things that your players can interact with and use to their advantage. Remember, environmental stuff is key to a good combat, okay? All right, thank you everyone so much for watching this stream. We have a masterclass stream going on next Monday. I'm going to be showing power users how to create timelines. So, and I can't tell you, I'm totally obsessed as a world creator. I'm obsessed with building my world, and timelines are a great way to kind of put some order and some chronology to your map. Definitely a power user thing. I'm not sure how many users use this to make timelines with the tool, but it's totally doable. It just requires a little bit of creativity and thinking outside the box. All right, please stay safe and healthy. Merry map making, and I will see you all next week. Bye-bye, everyone. Take care.